Well, I don't know how we can spin this positively, but Kylen Mills and I are going to do our best to find some silver linings from the Golden State Warriors continuing what's been going on all season, which is an abysmal road record, struggles on the road. It might be over, folks. I don't know how Kylen's going to feel. We'll find out next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Are we there yet, Kylen? June. Sorry, hat off. Good run, Golden State. Love you. Yeah, we might be there, folks. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Use the promo code Locked On. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, Twitter at Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow. The Warriors right now have the second worst road record in the history of the NBA for a defending world champion. That was just an ugly game. Kylen, how are you doing? Great to see you. I've missed you all week. And your reaction to that was just an ugly game.
Yeah, Ty, good to see you. Not great to watch that game. It was painful. I mean, the back-to-back that we just witnessed has been tough to stomach and tough to watch. Some of my initial thoughts are that the Warriors seemed to figure it out that driving was creating success both last night and tonight. Last night, 64 points in the paint. Tonight, in that third quarter run where they finally got the game close, it was Jonathan Kuminga and Jordan Poole driving and attacking the basket and getting to the line that was closing the gap. Yet for some reason, the Warriors don't seem to continue hammering that. Like last night, they start chucking up threes late in the game in the fourth quarter. I didn't like the shot selection when they were already cold from deep. And then tonight, the fourth quarter was just ugly. It was ugly. I mean, I know we harp on defense on the road, and like I'm running out of things to say about that. Like it's just, it's not good. There's no way to look at it. The only positives for me to take away, I always try to find something, is Jonathan Kuminga and Jordan Poole leading the Warriors. I thought both were great off the bench. Jordan Poole's defense still suspect. Nothing new there. I saw some people pointing that out on Twitter. Right? Yes, I'm aware. But he was a huge part of that third quarter rally. Jonathan Kuminga played really well down that stretch also. And I thought those two were great. They had the two best scores as far as plus minus go in the plus category. And I mean, it's kind of surprising because you look at the Warriors returning their 5 starters from last season's championship, and the starters were what let the Warriors down tonight. And they consistently have started out slow on the road. It's very difficult to come back when you have to dig yourself out of a 10-point hole after a tough first quarter. So we got some work to do here coming up into the last 10 games of the season.
Yeah, and even Jordan Poole, like you mentioned him being one of the positives. First of all, I gotta open up the show's Twitter account. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. I posted a poll asking Dub Nation what your sentiments are, what your feelings are about Jordan Poole, because I'm hearing a lot of disgruntled individuals, a lot of anger, a lot of disappointment. I'm hearing talk of trade. And so I sent out a poll, and the poll question was, would you be okay moving on from him if the trade was reasonable, right? And the one name I threw out there as an example was Anunoby, right? Because the Warriors reportedly were interested in him during right before the trade deadline. I don't know if that's a realistic trade. This was just literally throwing out an example. And right now, the trade results, if the Warriors could trade the pool party for a player of relatively equal value, And if you can keep DiVincenzo, right? Because I feel like DiVincenzo is an important part of all this. Would you support it? Or are you ready to move on from the sixth man on a world championship team? 70.6% of those who voted said trade him. And only 29.4% said Jordan Poole is a lifer. He's part of this team for good. Even tonight, he had that ugly turnover in the fourth quarter. I felt like the Warriors were still in it. They were rallying, and then he just did that ugly cross-court pass that was turned over. It was lazy. It became a 5-point swing because the Grizzlies hit a three. So even Poole, like you're right, even though he was one of the two quote-unquote positives, just still just, reckless. And he had 4 turnovers in tonight's game. But I do like that you brought up Jonathan Kuminga. Well, let's focus. Why don't we start with him? Something positive here because he had an awesome game. He played 30 minutes. I'm glad he got a good run. Shot 8 of 16 from the field. He was 4 for 7 from 3. He had that one monster dunk, I think, in the second quarter. That was a rim rattler. And one particularly interesting stat that stuck out, besides the 24 points, was his 8 rebounds. He was called to task to grab boards, to be more aggressive on the rebounding side of things. That's where they need him. And he stepped up. He got 8 rebounds. So that was awesome. Anything you want to add about Kuminga besides just a great night?
Jonathan Kuminga bounced back really well. So that's the number one thing for me is he responded after what wasn't a great night from Jonathan Kuminga last night against the Hawks. I want to be very upfront about that. People are making comments to me on Twitter just because I pointed out that, Steve Kerr rotation wise went with Anthony Lamb over Jonathan Kuminga late last night with 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And I questioned that a little bit because I personally believe what I said on Twitter as well was that Jonathan Kuminga's basement is still ahead of Anthony Lamb's ceiling. So I think Anthony Lamb played well for his skill set. And I thought Jonathan Kuminga didn't play great for his skill set. But I don't think that necessarily quantifies or you know what I mean, cancels out. I don't feel like Kuminga's poor play is so much worse even than Anthony Lamb on a good night to where
I'm with you. I agree with you 100%.
But tonight, 100%. I thought it was great. And it was positive to see Jonathan Kuminga come back and play aggressive. He had a monster jam. I thought he had a couple of nice, just smart plays. He knocked down threes to open up the game. I mean, that was the big surprise as well, is that, Steph Curry's driving and kicking out to Jonathan Kuminga, who's swishing triples. So that was pretty fun to watch. So Kuminga hitting threes. He's a solid 3-point shooter, but usually doesn't shoot even as well as he did tonight. That was a positive. Him getting to the basket was a positive. Rebounding was a big positive. Some people pointed out he was not rebounding well last night. Absolutely true. Absolutely correct. He came back, was much more aggressive and was efficient on the glass against a strong interior and physical interior team that the Grizzlies have. So everything I thought was a positive. Jonathan Kuminga bounced back in a big way from what was a below average Jonathan Kuminga performance last night. But I proved that Kuminga can absolutely be an impact player on this team. When he does play to his full capabilities, even off the bench, he's putting up, 20 plus points. So, I think it's exciting to watch. And like I said, I really think that Poole Kuminga combo is what helped close the gap for the Warriors in the second half. It just, the fourth quarter got ugly and they could not close. The Warriors can't close. And that's the other thing. To me, the Warriors can't close. We're down 2 points with the ball with a minute to go, and it just completely unraveled. So that's just been, kind of crazy and also painful to watch.
I wholeheartedly agree. And here's Steve Kerr, a soundbite dropped courtesy of NBC Sports Bay Area, where Steve Kerr in the postgame press conference talks about Kuminga, who had, again, an awesome game.
What did you just think about Jonathan Kuminga tonight and what he was able to do?
Yeah, JK was great. He played both ends, knocked down his threes, rebounded well. That was the biggest thing. That's the thing that we're looking for all the time. He had 8 rebounds tonight, 3 offensive. If he adds that to his game consistently, it'll change everything for him. And so we're going to stay on him about that. He's a young guy, so he's learning so much every single day, and he's making strides. So, very happy with his development.
Yeah, and I agree. Like I said, anyone who watches this show consistently knows how much I love Kuminga, and I think he's the future. And I'm glad to see that the present is starting to catch up. When we come back, we're going to talk about the standings and the remainder of the season because there's a lot to break down there. Only 10 games remaining. in the regular season. And right now, I don't know how you could be encouraged by what's going on. But first, let's talk about PrizePicks. Let me get our overlay going. I forgot to play PrizePicks tonight. I wanted to, although in hindsight, given Stephen Curry finished the night with only 16 points, I know I would have lost my bet because I always bet the over on Steph. But regardless, it's a super fun game. It's legal here in California. For those of us who are just frustrated about our lack of access to FanDuel, you can still play PrizePicks here in California. And it's all about over-unders on individual performances. Stephen Curry, for example, the OU on him was probably, I'm guessing, 29.5. If you had bet the under, you would have won. And that's all you have to do is just bet a minimum of 2 players over unders. Could be stats pertaining to points, rebounds, assists. You can go across different sports. Even Kylen Mills is number 1 sport, soccer, where she's covering the earthquakes and coaches and formerly played in college. You can even do MLS bets with PrizePicks. It's super fun. 2 to 6 players. If you pick 6 players and win, you can win up to 25 times the money you put in. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. It's that simple. And if you can't give $100, you only have 50, 25, whatever the number is, they will match that amount. Just don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. I like Joe's optimism here. No stress. A number 7, number 6 seed is perfect. You avoid the Lakers, you avoid Phoenix, you avoid Denver until the Western Conference Finals. I think Joe's implying those are the 3 teams the Warriors want to avoid. Kylen, do you have the standings in front of you? Do you want me to take control of it? I don't care either way.
I mean, I can bring up my laptop.
I got it.
I've got them up. I've got them up just on a tab here. And but I was trying to refresh them.
No, I got it. Don't worry. I just didn't want to hog all the mic time. So real quick,
right? Go ahead.
So real quick right now, the Golden State Warriors, with this loss, with the fact that they've dropped 3 straight all on the road, of course, they're back to 500. You got 10 games remaining on the season, 5 at home, 5 on the road. So if they win all the remaining home games, lose all the remaining road games, they're going to be a 500 team. Is that enough to get into the playoffs? I don't know. Right now, the Warriors are the 7th seed. They're a half game behind the Dallas Mavericks, who they're going to play in a few days. They're a full game ahead of the Timberwolves, who lost again today, I think, to the Raptors. They're a game also ahead of the Thunder, who are creeping up. And the Thunder are actually tied with the Warriors in terms of the loss column here. In fact, I'm not going to share my screen because it's too small. And then the Lakers are right in the mix as well. The Lakers are just a game and a half behind the Warriors. Now, what makes things particularly concerning is that the Golden State Warriors right now have just a game and a half lead over the Utah Jazz. And they only have a 2-game lead over the Pelicans. If those teams pass the Warriors, they're not even in the play-in. That's how precarious this whole situation is. What are your thoughts, Kylen, on the standings? We can go down in just a moment, looking at the schedule in terms of who they're going to play for the rest of the year. How are you feeling? I mean, are you comfortable that they're going to get into the playoffs at least in terms of the play-in? Are you worried they might just miss the whole thing altogether? Your thoughts and reaction to the standings and the 10 games remaining?
Nothing about the Warriors situation, especially down the stretch of the season, has been comfortable. I feel like as fans, even media members, at some point you're expecting them to suddenly show up and string together positive performances and wins. And it just hasn't happened. They just haven't figured it out on the road. And when they continue to struggle on the road, they're going to continue to sit at 500 and to be just lingering around this lower tier of, middle playoff teams where maybe you're in the play-in, maybe you're in, towards a 6th seed, or maybe you're not in it at all.
Yeah.
With the way the West is, shaked out this season, there is zero margin for error. And it's actually funny you bring this up because a couple days ago, I mean, it's crazy to even look at it. This was before this back-to-back 2-3 days ago that I saw a couple fans, media members, whoever, tweeting out some things celebrating, especially the fans, Warriors 5 seed, possibly 4 seed. We're coming after the 4 seed, la, la, la. I tweeted out flat out. I said, I'm having a hard time celebrating because in order for us to secure a 4 or 5 seed, the Warriors have to win some of these games on the road coming up here in the final stretch of the season. And I just don't believe they can do it flat out because they haven't done it all season. Why all of a sudden now would they, figure it out or turn on a light switch? And, I just questioned whether that will ever be able to happen. Are they suddenly going to turn on a switch and just be able to perform and win on the road? I just don't know that I believe that. And so to me, it's been hard, even when the Warriors have, slid up a couple games into that 4 to 5 seed to really say, hey, I feel comfortable. I feel good. I'm excited because I just feel like there's no margin for error in the West because of, you mentioned how close it is. And second of all, the Warriors have to figure it out on the road in order to secure one of those seeds. And they just can't do it. They just can't seem to do it. At this point, I do feel like they're going to be a play-in team. Like even just looking at the games coming up on the schedule, I know we're going to break that down a little bit. Like there are enough winnable games that if they stay at 500, they should be at least in a play-in. They're not going to miss the playoffs entirely. But I don't like being in the play-in because one game, anything can happen. One game against one team, and then you lose and you play a second game. But again, then it's one game against one team. And to me, that's where you've got a huge margin for error, especially going into the postseason. If the Warriors don't have home court advantage, given how they played on the road this season, I don't feel great about any matchup in the postseason where they don't have home court advantage, because then they're going to have to win games on the road, which they can't do against, the Atlanta Hawks or an 8 seed, maybe a 10, they haven't been able to perform on the road flat out. So I don't feel great. I feel like there's still time for them to make the playoffs, possibly secure the 6th seed to where they avoid the play-in, but they're going to have to show up and they're going to have to, really buckle down and focus during this last stretch and try to take 1, if not 2 games on the road during this upcoming stand. And with the Rockets in front of them, that should be doable.
You would think, right? You would hope.
That's the thing. You would think. I don't want to make any assumptions at this point, but you would think. One would think.
Well, real quick, because you're right. Normally, the Rockets are quite possibly the worst team in the NBA. You would think that, right? And I think the Warriors already won a game in Houston earlier this year. But when you look at, I'm not muted. Okay, good. But when you look at who they played recently, the Rockets, for example, have beaten the Celtics at home. They've beaten the Lakers at home. They beat the Pelicans at home. They have a 3-game winning streak right now. So I can't even feel that great about the Rockets. It's just gnarly. I want to share the schedule right now over the next 10 games. These are the final 10 games. Kylen, can you see the screen okay? Is it all right? So the audience hopefully can see this as well. The Warriors have 2 games left on this 5-game road swing that they've fallen now 0-3 to. They play the Rockets Monday. They play the Mavericks Wednesday. So hopefully they win one of those 2. Hopefully they get a split out of that. And then they go back home. They play the Sixers, who always play the Warriors tough. The Timberwolves, who that's where I really wish Andrew Wiggins would be back, because Wiggins loves enacting vengeance on his former team. They play the Pelicans at home. If the Pelicans don't have Zion, that's an incredibly winnable game. And then the Spurs are actually the worst team, not the Rockets, although they're battling for that. And then you wrap up the season with the Nuggets in Denver, one of the hardest road games you could possibly play. Who knows if Denver is going to rise up for that, because they might have home court established by then. So maybe they're resting starters at that point. Who knows? Then it's a home game against the Thunder, who right now are tied with the Warriors in the loss column. And then the final 2 games of the season are back on the road in Sacramento to play the upstart Sacramento Kings, who for the first time since I believe 2006 are going to finish above 500. Congrats to former Warriors coach Mike Brown. He should win Coach of the Year. And then they finish up the season in Portland. What's your prediction, Kylen? 10 games remaining. Again, 5 at home, 5 on the road. Those home games are not easy either, especially when you consider the Sixers, for example. That could be a loss because Embiid's like the only player I can think of that Draymond really has a hard time dealing with defensively. Will they come out of that 5-5? Do you think it's going to be a little better? What is your guess for the Warriors in these last 10 games?
Yeah, I'm right between 5-5, maybe 6-4. But again, I think they have to show up. First of all, because they play so poorly on the road, you have to be perfect at home. And like you said, not all of these home games are going to be cakewalks. You have to be perfect at home and then take one on the road, or maybe you win 4 at home and possibly win 2 on the road. I know you mentioned the Rockets have been playing better lately, but they're still one of the worst teams in the NBA. So I do see that as being a winnable game. And then I also actually don't think that the Mavericks are a bad matchup for the Warriors, just given personnel. And the Mavs have been a team that have been spiraling a little bit lately. They won their last 2, but they're 4-6 in their last 10, and they had a really poor stretch of games. And I don't know that they've quite figured it out and gelled since adding Kyrie Irving. I don't really know what's going on there in Dallas, but there certainly, have been some cracks in the armor there to where I think maybe that's winnable if the Warriors show up and play well. And then I think that I agree with you, though, that the 76ers at home is going to be really, really tough. That's one I don't feel confident about, even though the Warriors do play much better at Chase Center.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm between a 5-5 and 6-4, but I think they really have to, come in and buckle down. And at some point, it's gotten frustrating to see this lack of urgency, intensity, and effort they've had. And at some point, the regular season is coming to an end. I know, there's been a lot of talk about, hey, they're champions. They don't take the regular season seriously. Now is the time where you have to take it seriously. Everything is on the line. You have everything to lose. The West is wide open still at this point. As you mentioned, there's, you're 1 or 2 games behind, 1 or 2 games above, slipping and making,
Yeah.
major movement just in a couple games. So this is the time where they need to care. You've got to care about every single game down the stretch. And honestly, based on what we saw the last 2 nights, I still am not buying it that the Warriors do care.
Yeah. Yeah, it's when we come back, let's talk about the starters because they really underperformed tonight. In fact, I feel like they've underperformed the last 2 games. Steph and Clay, for example, last game, each committed 6 turnovers. The first time in their entire careers they've done that. Where together they each turned it over a minimum of 6 times.
Yeah, that was
They didn't
tough.
look better. Yeah, Clay, this whole road trip has looked awful. And before we go to break, real quick, I have to play this soundbite again. This was from last night. This was Steve Kerr in the postgame press conference talking about how he thinks something good is going to happen with this group. Let's hear this one more time real quick.
14-4 out of the gate. We looked great, and then we started turning it over, and their transition was hurting us. So that was the problem the last 8 minutes of the first quarter or so. And then we settled down after that, did a better job of handling their transition, taking care of the ball. Proud of our guys' effort. We had our chances. We had several shots in the last couple minutes to take the lead and just couldn't get anything to go. But love the effort, love the energy. These guys are fighting, and I believe in them. I believe something good's going to happen with this group. We just got to keep fighting and keep moving forward.
I'm still waiting to hear what he has to say today. I don't see any sound bites. I play that largely because Steve Kerr is trending on Twitter right now. And I don't know how you answer that with tonight's performance. Let's talk about when we come back, Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, and maybe Steve Kerr as well. First of all, got to give some love. Let me get the overlay to Nissan. And we're going to be announcing our Nissan's electric player of the game. And thank goodness for Jonathan Kuminga, right? Would you agree with that, Kylen? Can we?
Yeah.
He was electric, right? He was brilliantly fierce. I feel like he was stunningly powerful, especially with that big old dunk. Is that a consensus, Kylen? Are we both voting for him?
I'm voting
All right,
for
there you go.
JK. I mean, I just think Poole's still too inconsistent defensively. He was the only one who showed any flashes, but JK far and above the rest of the team is in terms of putting together a whole positive performance.
Absolutely. And Nissan's most electric player of the week is brought to you by the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. And again, Jonathan Kuminga is our Nissan most electric player of the week. He had a fantastic game tonight. The stat line, again, in 30 minutes of play, I was just really happy Kerr gave him the minutes. I felt like my sentiments were identical to you, where I felt like he should have finished last night's game. The Warriors were within 2 with 58 seconds to go, and then Lamb committed that foul, and they never recovered after that. But tonight, 24 points, 8 rebounds. Again, 30 minutes of play. Bravo, Jonathan Kuminga. You're only 20 years old. The 2023 Nissan Ariya packs pinned to your seat power and premium intelligence all in one electric vehicle. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya, the electric vehicle for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms that she's active on, including Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. At her name, super easy, Kylen Mills. Kevin Prentice in the chat writes, the main problem is defense. Playing defense is all about effort. It's about moving your feet, not reaching with your hands. The Warriors don't have the intestinal effort to play defense right now. I concur. The effort is just not there. And part of the effort that's really disappointing to me, Kylen, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well, is oftentimes the Warriors defenders, whether it's veterans like Klay Thompson or Draymond Green, I see it from them a lot. They're not bothering even raising their hands to at least intimidate the shooter, at least distract the shooter, even if you're not going to get the block. Sometimes they're not even running out there to cause any form of distraction. I agree. The effort is not there. I thought Draymond Green, despite the fact that he had the suspension and he had an extra day of rest, so he didn't play the back-to-back, he was disappointing to me. He played 30 minutes at 11 points, 7 rebounds, but the stats are always misleading with him. That's not what you rely on him for. Dante DiVincenzo only played 22 minutes tonight. If there's a criticism of Kerr that I think is valid, it's why did you only play Dante DiVincenzo 22 minutes? And on top of that, he only had 3 shot attempts, did have 7 assists, 5 rebounds. Anything there? Like, did you see something that made you wonder why Dante DiVincenzo only played 22 minutes? Because he's been playing like 35 plus on average. I wonder what led to the reduction tonight. Any clues from you?
I don't know. Nothing about Dante's performance stood out to me tonight. I didn't think he looked great. I didn't think he looked bad when in the minutes he was in. I just think the starters in general just came out poor. I mean, yes, the Grizzlies came out on fire. They were hitting shots, but like at some point there also needs to be some accountability in the Warriors defense. Like you mentioned, the sense of urgency and the effort that they're putting in and, night in and night out when teams are putting up great numbers, at some point there is some responsibility on the Warriors defensive effort and closing out and guarding on the perimeter. So I'm not really sure in regards to Dante DiVincenzo specifically. Like I said, nothing about his game tonight stood out to me except from, I don't know. Like I said, I just think that start to the game was rough. I mean, it was rough for the Warriors. That first quarter was rough. Yeah. And then in terms of defense, I know you just were kind of mentioning it again, and something that I tweeted out, you mentioned the effort, intensity, those types of things, was like, it's still very perplexing to me. And I know it's something we've talked about on here, how Jordan Poole is so quick, so explosive, and so athletic on offense, yet literally stands on defense and gets blown by on defense because it's not a lack of athletic talents, clearly. And a couple people, I had a lot of people actually, tweeting back at me because I just, kind of put it out to the public as, like, what is it? Why is Jordan Poole so bad at defense when he is so athletically gifted? And every single response everyone had is absolutely right, in that it's more a mentality, it's a mental thing, it's discipline, it's execution, it's energy, it's hustle. All of those things are absolutely correct. But the thing that's hard for me to understand is I just feel like I haven't seen an improvement the last couple seasons. Like, I just feel like if the Warriors staff was getting on Jordan Poole, being like, hey, you've got to be better defensively. And Steve Kerr is a head coach who harps on defense, defense, and you're going over defense and you're going over, whatever the game plan is in practice, or I mean, obviously they don't get a ton of practice, but still you're going over the game plan, going over assignments. They're in his ear. You've got to put effort in defensively. You have to be sharp on rotations. You have to do X, Y, Z, but he just continues to not do it. Like, I just don't understand if they are, impressing on him defense, you've got to perform, how he just has not gotten better. If it is a mentality, is it a choice? That he's just not making the smart plays, that he's not hustling or putting in effort. At what point is the staff getting on him and saying, you've got to get better at this? And is he just not doing it? Does he just not have the mentality, the discipline, maybe the basketball IQ to figure out where he needs to be and things like that? I don't know that I don't know. But I think that, some of those other pieces, it's not the athletic piece that's missing for Jordan Poole, and not by any means on defense, but I'm just surprised we haven't seen any progress. I guess, that's my thing. Like, I don't think Jordan Poole looks any better now than he did his rookie season on defense. You know what I mean? Like, and he didn't even get a lot of playing, he wasn't a key piece then, but I just don't feel like I've seen, oh, wow, at least he's gotten a little bit better through the course of this season, last season, previously. So, I don't know. When you bring up energy, intensity, and hustle, that's one thing that a lot of people brought up in terms of Jordan Poole continuing to struggle defensively.
Yeah. The defense. Yeah. And with the Warriors especially, like when I do a show with Rick Barry and we talk about defense, he always preaches the fact that defense is about the team. It's not about the individual. And Steve Kerr talks about this a lot. He talks about the Warriors playing on a string. What he's referring to when he says that is each of the Warriors players having each other's backs when it comes to switches, when it comes to calling out mismatches, when it comes to calling out screens, being at the right place at the right time, setting proper traps, covering proper angles. So, for example, if someone's coming down on the baseline, your defensive position is set up so you can corner him, trap him. And yeah, Jordan Poole, for some reason, I don't know if it's a lack of aggression. I don't know if it's apathy. Young players, usually the last thing that comes around for them is defense. But you're right. Even though offensively, we've seen this drastic uptick in terms of progress and growth from Jordan Poole, defensively, we have not seen that. And it's been really glaring this year. What is your opinion of Steve Kerr's management of Stephen Curry's minutes? I feel like everyone forgot this. And I brought this up the other day, and I'll bring it up with you now. I don't know if you remember last year how many people were so annoyed and pissed off at Steve Kerr, because for most of Stephen Curry's career, his rotation has been playing all of the first and third quarter, and then usually coming in at the 6-minute mark of the second and fourth quarter. And it's worked. It's a tried and true formula. They've won championships with it. And then last year, and Steph's obviously accomplished all sorts of incredible accolades doing that. And then last year, for most of the season, Kerr started tinkering with it, right? And it really drew the ire of a lot of people, myself included. And then finally, at the end of the season, with like a month left, I think Steph himself kind of put his foot down and said, "This is ridiculous. I'm just going to go back to my old rotation." And it worked out, and they won a title. I'm seeing Kerr mess around with that again this year. I don't know what the story is, but Steph just did not look good tonight. That's for sure. And him and Klay have just not been good for these last two games. Klay Thompson, particularly, if you look at his game log over the last 3 games, awful. I don't think he's cracked the 20-point mark for any of the games during this road trip. He had 14 points tonight. Was just 2 of 9 from 3. But what concerns me even more than the offense from Klay is just how defeated he looks out there. Sometimes you don't see him hustling on defense. He has these looks of just frustration, and he's almost like depressed and kind of just gives up. What are you seeing from the Splash Brothers this year? Because for Klay recently and with Steph, at least with the rotations, I'm seeing some funky stuff going on. Just what is your impression of those two? Because the Warriors don't win a title if they're not on their A game.
I'll start with Steph. I mean, to me, I just thought he looked tired tonight. I thought he looked a little bit gassed, and you do have to keep in mind this is a road back-to-back. Steph played, I think, 37 minutes last night, so he took on a big workload. Again, he's a player who's getting older, getting up into the mid-30s. It's not going to be as easy for him to come out, on the second night of a road back-to-back and to bring the same amount of energy. And I don't know, as far as big picture as to why Steve Kerr might be tinkering with the rotation with Steph specifically, but I know tonight, I'm sure that it was a little bit out of whack because some of those starters, the Warrior starters, needed some rest after, the amount of minutes they put up last night, specifically Steph Curry. Also, when you mentioned DiVincenzo not playing, that's another one who he played some pretty heavy minutes last night. He played 36 or 37 as well. And I thought DiVincenzo also looked a little bit tired. Like he usually brings like a huge, energy boost. It seems like he's a little energizer bunny running around out there, both on defense and offense. And I thought he didn't quite have that tonight, which I would assume was somewhat impacted by the fact that they're playing a back-to-back, and he also played the upwards of 36, 37 minutes. So as far as Steph goes, I think he looks tired. And to be frank, like, I think a lot of what fans have been saying is that Steph needs some help. I think there's, some legs to that, that he's been carrying a major burden with the way the team has struggled on the road. Just in general, some of the struggles this season, we're talking about, oh my gosh, Steph scored 50 points and the Warriors still lost. Like, he's putting in massive effort, putting in huge numbers, and this team still isn't winning. He's putting in big minutes. So, to me, if anything, when Steph has an off night, I'm willing to give him the pass, because I feel like he has been taking on such a big load, and I feel like he does look a little bit tired. Since coming back from injury, now that we've gotten, a series of games in, I feel like he kind of looked a little bit worn out tonight. And then as far as Klay Thompson goes, I mean, it hasn't been great lately. I mean, I just don't know what additional, analysis there is aside from just not good. And what's so strange about it is that Klay had turned on a different gear when Steph was out. And remember, we had those string of really not just great performances and shooting nights from Klay Thompson, but also like great leadership. I know we talked on the show like a week or two ago just about how Klay's body language was so much better, and that, he came out with a fire. He was leading the team. He was playing great defensively. He was knocking down shots offensively. He was fired up. He, was doing everything right. And I agree with you that the body language looked very different tonight. He looks a little bit defeated. I do agree. You can look at a couple possessions where maybe, he looks checked out. So I think that's what's, a little bit disheartening to me, is that he had such a good streak going. Like, Klay Thompson was so engaged and was such a strong leader when Steph Curry was out. Like, you have to keep that energy when Steph comes back, because Steph needs help. He can't just do it all on his own. This team needs a multitude of scorers. They need more leadership, more energy in general. And like, you want Steph and Klay doing those things at the same time, not Klay stepping up when Steph is out, and then Steph comes back and suddenly, he slides into the background, and again, just the body language, the energy, some of those things, outside of just shooting. Because like, I get, some of the shooters are going to have bad nights, but to me, the bigger concern is just some of the, the body language and effort that you kind of talked about in moments where he might look checked out. That's, those are things that you can easily fix, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, and just Klay in the month of January had his best scoring month in his career. He averaged 27 points per game. In February, the number dropped down a tick. Still a fantastic month, though. He averaged 25.5 points per game. And he shot 45.4% from three in February, 43.1% from three in January. And then now in March, we've seen a regression. He's down to 21.7 points per game in the month of March. His three-point shooting is down. I say down, it's still exemplary. It's at 41.2%. But you look at the last three games, 15 points, 14 points. That's the road trip so far. When he was at home, he lit up Phoenix for 38. Against Milwaukee in that nationally televised game, he scored 22. But in March as a whole, his numbers have dropped a little bit. That has to increase. Last night I was with Jack Winter. I missed you. But we talked about the fact, we had a discussion about Stephen Curry and whether or not the front office has been there for him. And the debate was, has Joe Lacob and has Bob Myers given Stephen Curry the resources that he needs to win another championship, especially given, his prime years are waning. Do you want to do a bonus episode and just go for another 10, 15 minutes to talk about that? Or do you have to run? What are you thinking?
I got to run.
You got to run. Okay.
I got it at midnight.
Let's save that for the next show. Then we'll talk about that there. I do want to let people know before we go. First of all, for the people that talk about the Kings, congratulations if you're a Kings fan. It is awesome that they're going to be probably a 2 or 3 seed come postseason. I still just don't know if they're going to do much because experience is important. I value postseason experience as one of the most important variables, period. It's a huge reason why, for example, I've been down on the two-way guys. They don't have world championship experience. Dante DiVincenzo and most of this team does. I really consider that variable to be vitally important, and the Kings don't have that. So I do feel like that's going against them. What do you think about the Kings before we go? Like, do you think they're gonna succeed in the postseason? Or are they going to be a one and done? What are your thoughts?
I want to believe in the Kings. I really do. I need to see the matchup and I need to see who they actually end up being stacked up against, because I do think that experience ends up meaning something, especially in the postseason. And that's an area where, like, the Grizzlies have looked fantastic during the regular season, but haven't been able to, make it to that next level. Because I personally think, at least from what we saw last season, prior seasons, that they're just still so young and they still don't yet have that experience of closing out a playoff series.
Right.
So I do think there is some truth to that, but I don't know. I would like to see who the Kings are stacked up against. I'm not willing to write them off at all. I think that a lot of the national pundits, analysts, journalists, whatever, have disrespected the Kings a little bit, to be quite frank, and completely not even addressing them in when you're talking about a Western Conference Finals picture. And I think, given the respect that they've earned during the regular season, let's see what they can do in the postseason. I mean, making a championship run, I think that would be, a little bit of a stretch. It would be a tough task, but like to say they're not even a factor in potentially competing to get to the Western Conference Finals, I don't think that's necessarily fair. And I hope that they, prove some people wrong, because good for Kings fans. You've waited a long time. The team with the most wins now in the regular season since 2006. I mean, let's see them go do some damage, but I think it does depend a little bit on who they're matched up against. I want to see it, but I'm not writing them off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you as well. They could do a lot. We'll see what happens. Before we go, thanks Mark Medina for asking for people to hit the like button. We really need subscribers as well. And a huge reason for that is right now our show has 6,480 subscribers approximately. If we get to 8,000, I think, Kylen, if you're interested, of course, we can ramp you up. We can get you on the show 3 days a week. And if we can get that subscriber, we just need to get growth. Show. I want you on this show with me every day. That's the goal. So spread the word if you can. Help us out. Let's get those sub numbers up. Thanks as always for checking us out. Again, disappointing loss, disappointing game, disappointing road trip. The fact that the Golden State Warriors, as defending champions, might finish the season with like a 41-41 record. That's just wild to me. I don't know. I'm not feeling great about them, but we'll see what happens. Is that it? Are we done? Are we good? Have a great rest of the weekend, everyone. Bye. Take care. Later.